Hi, everyone, and welcome to Autism Hope Library. I have one of our favorite guests. You've seen him before, and if you haven't, you really need to go back and watch some of the other interviews because they're absolutely fantastic. I have Dr. DevinHouston from Houston Enzymes, and today we're going to be talking about how to use enzymes to help with special diets. All the alphabet: gluten-free, dairy-free, SCD, keto, and ABCDEFG, because there's so many out there. So welcome, Devin. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Kristen, it's good to be back. Always a pleasure.
Well, we talk about diet all the time. Anytime we've been at conferences, I feel like diet and digestion are some of the number one things we talk about on top of poop, right? So, we're always trying to figure out what can we give our kids to help them feel better. What I love about talking about diets is that you don't have to be on a waiting list. You can go to the, market and grocery store right now. You don't have to have a prescription for it, and you're the ones that are, paying for your kiddo's food. So it's not like your kid has a credit card that they're going to go buy it. So you have all the control over this. On top of that, it's so exciting because 15 years ago, gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, all the other frees were gross. They tasted like cardboard. It would cost you $25 to make a gluten-free, dairy-free waffle because of like this 27 ingredients you'd have to buy. And then you could throw it against the wall and it would almost put a hole in the wall. Today, there's so many companies that make just delicious, delicious things. And I feel like today it's so much easier to do diet. So let's just dive in here. How to use enzymes with special diets. I think before, maybe let's talk about the alphabet a little bit though. Let's talk about what the heck is gluten-free? When somebody says GFCF, what does that mean, Devin?
Yeah, we've all sort of developed our own lingo, and we've got plenty of acronyms to throw around. So, yeah, GFCF, gluten-free, casein-free. And then you have to back up. Some people don't realize what gluten is or what casein is, but basically it's just a diet that eliminates wheat and dairy products from the diet. Basically because of just one protein in each food. Gluten is the main protein in wheat, and casein is the main primary protein in dairy. So, there's lots of other good things in wheat and dairy, but because if you have an issue with just one thing, such as these proteins, then you have to avoid those foods. So the problem is a lot of people years ago, 20, 25 years ago, and a lot of them were parents of kids on the spectrum. And they observe things. They're a great resource because they notice everything. When it comes to their kids, they keep diaries, they keep journals, they keep notes. And the whole thing is they started noticing when their kids were eating wheat and dairy products, they either had gut issues, constipation, bloating, tummy aches, and also sometimes that manifested as behavioral responses as well. So they started seeing the connection, and they started taking those foods out of their kids' diet, and they would see improvements. The improvements in some would be huge. The improvements in others would be smaller, not so. It all goes under this whole umbrella of food intolerances. But gluten and casein were probably wheat and dairy were the first foods noticed by the autism community to have a big dramatic effect on their kids, especially those on the spectrum. And it's not just limited to those on the spectrum. Especially in the millennial generation, a lot of them are experiencing what we call non-celiac gluten intolerance, or NCGI. Yeah, there's another acronym we can throw in. But yeah, they're not on the spectrum, and they don't have celiac disease. But whenever they take in wheat products, they experience, stomach aches, bloatiness, diarrhea, or constipation, stuff that really severely inhibited their social lives. So and as you noted, you and I remember when gluten-free started up, the foods were not so great. We used to joke about gluten-free pizza. You get a gluten-free pizza, throw away the pizza, and eat the cardboard box because it tasted better than the pizza. But you know, they've made tremendous strides. In the little storefront we have, we carry a variety of gluten-free cookies and cakes and muffins and breads, and we take them home and we make them ourselves. No one can tell that it's gluten-free. It tastes great. So that's one thing. But but that's actually the first diet that enzymes actually became important. And to me, I remember that day sitting in my office at National Enzyme Company, and a salesperson came in and said, "Hey, we've got this company that wants to know if there's an enzyme that will help with GFCF." And I was the same thing. I was like, "What's GFCF?" They eliminate wheat and dairy out of their diets. And I was like, "Why?" Those are great foods. I love them. I eat them. And I said, "Well, it bothers their kids. It upsets their kids." So we started looking, and I knew that they were gluten and casein were proteins in those foods. We knew we had enzymes that broke down proteins. So I said, let's just gather up a whole bunch of protease enzymes that break down proteins, and put them in a product, give them to the company, and they can try it out with their customers and see how it goes. So that's basically what we did. And I remember in that product, I threw in a couple of extra enzymes that I thought would be helpful, like lactase for dip. Since there was a dairy intolerance, I figured maybe it was lactose and not casein at the time. And the product was really made a hit in their informal kind of not well controlled, but it was basically a field test of the product. And they got really good feedback. So that's actually what prompted my interest in the whole idea of enzymes helping those on the spectrum with their dietary issues. So we had a product that went gangbangers with wheat and dairy. So the question was, well, those aren't the only food products that bother these kids or rest of people. So we started getting interested in other diets. And remind me, what other diets are we going to talk about?
So SCD, which stands for specific carbohydrate diet, right? Which is similar to GAPS diet. If you've ever heard of GAPS, it's a little different. But and then you have the keto, you have Feingold, you have food maps, but then you also have body ecology diet, which is a fermented diet. And not to confuse all of you guys, you're like, what? I thought they would just go to the grocery store and I'm happy if I eat their.
I'm just going to write these down.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how are you supposed to know? I'm sitting here thinking, if I'm a new parent sitting there, I'm just thinking of like the basic food groups. Like, as we grew up, you think, okay, I need a vegetable, I want a meat, I want, a dairy product, a fruit. And so when you have our kiddos, sometimes our kiddos don't fit in that box. And so that is why there's all these different diets. And, we're not really here to talk to you about what each of those diets are. If you guys are interested, you guys can go to Autism Hope Alliance's homepage. There's a resource booklet there called Autism What the Experts Know. It's free. You can download it. Not all of those diets, but a good majority of those diets are in there. It's like our Cliff Note version. It's 1,500 words or less. If then you want to learn more, Google is your really good friend at that point. We also have more videos just on that. However, we want to talk about how the enzymes help with these diets, because some of you guys have had your kids on like the cleanest diet, best diet, and yet we still have constipation. We still have bloating. We still have diarrhea. We still have dark circles under the eyes or maybe red cheeks. And that is what Dr. Houston is here to say, yeah, well, guess what? You need some enzymes with that. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. You're right. And I was smiling because I was remembering way back when all this first started, the GFCF people the people who determined the diet and such had great influence in the autism community. And they actually took offense to the notion that something in a pill could help with the diet. And I remember getting, this was in the days of message boards, getting what we call flamed back then, where I said, well, there's an enzyme that can help break down gluten. And when you do that, it does it in the stomach before the gluten moves into the gut. So theoretically, we may not have to eliminate from the diet. And by that time, I knew a lot of parents had made their own choice to go ahead, and when they saw the enzymes were working, which, by the way, if they were on the diet and they added enzymes while being on the diet, it says a couple of things. Either they weren't doing the diet strict enough, or there were other sources, other proteins besides gluten and casein that were causing issues. So that's the bad thing about a diet. You can only eliminate something that you know about. If you don't know about a particular food, or you're not aware of which food is causing issues, then it's a little hard to know what to avoid eating. Otherwise, you just go on what we call there's another diet called the NFD, the no food diet.
I was like, what's that one? I don't know that.
You eliminate all food, and that's it. You just don't eat, and all of the bad side effect is that you starve to death. So anyway, a number of people were saying, well, if the enzymes work with these slight infractions that my kid has, I said, why can't they work all the time? Which is a legit question. So a lot of these parents were doing it on their own, and they were contacting us and telling us, hey, it works great. Why do I need the diet? And so early on, the diet people just kind of misunderstood our intent. Our intent was not to replace the GFCF diet. It was to supplement it. But more importantly, it was to give parents a choice and another tool. One thing I resented was the sort of overbearing and judgmental approach by a lot of people who were and their intentions were good. They saw that the diet worked, and they wanted parents to succeed and have good results, but sometimes they were a little too aggressive, and in their trying to help, and also not realizing that diets can be very difficult to employ or institute in a certain family style if your budget's not there, because we knew gluten-free, casein-free foods are more expensive, they're harder to find. If you're, economically disadvantaged, you may not be able to afford those type of foods or to be on the diet. So to me, it was a matter of choice. They could always do the diet, and they can always do the enzymes, and if they work, the science clearly stated that if you're breaking down the gluten, and you break down enough of it, then you reduce the severity of the issues you were seeing, and it was demonstrable, and it was provable. You can give the enzymes to your child or take them yourself, and if they work, you're going to see a reduction in the problems. If they don't work, then you can see it. And if it does work and you stop taking the enzymes and the problems come back, and you go back on the enzymes, well, then you've pretty well demonstrated to yourself that these things work. So to me, it was simple. And as a scientist, I tried to keep things simple. To me, it's like, why go to the bother of an expense of doing something that makes the kid miserable, makes them hate their parent. I know one parent whose son just insisted that she hated him because she made him eat these foods and wouldn't let him have these good foods that he wanted. So it's either do that, or they can take a couple of capsules of an enzyme supplement and be good to go. So, and there's this other argument. I found this interesting and a little bit offensive. It's like giving your child poison and then giving them the antidote. Gluten being the poison and the enzyme being the antidote. Well, again, I took offense at that because no parent is is knowingly going to give their child poison. And come on, it's gluten, and yeah, it can be difficult on those who are allergic to it or intolerant to it, but a poison, no. And if it works, it works. You can't argue with success. And here we are 20 years down the road. We're still here. Our products are still here. Other companies' products are still here. So obviously they're working, or they wouldn't be here. So, the GFCF diet was the big test, and we passed that. And the next diet, one that you mentioned, was SCD, or specific carbohydrate diet. And I remember going through the same thing. Do you remember the founder of the diet, Elaine Gottschall, wrote a great book, and she was really smart, very smart. And she knew the science behind these particular carbohydrates, the ones that cause trouble and the ones that don't. And it basically involved the linkages between the sugar groups and the carbohydrate. Some carbs were okay, others were not, and they caused gas, bloating, bowel movement issues, and those type of things. And again, some behavioral issues as well. And again, the same thing. You eliminate those foods, and she outlined which ones they were, and you would get better. So that indicated that you were having an issue with those foods. Then the question was, by the people who are already taking enzymes, well, can enzymes help with GFCF? Can they help with SCD? And the answer was yes. Carbohydrates are easily broken up by enzymes that break up carbohydrates. You have them in your body, but again, they're produced down in the small intestine, and enzyme supplements are as stable, and so they work in the stomach way upstream, and some 3 to 4 hours prior to the food moving from the stomach into the gut. So you get a head start, and you break down these foods. Same thing with the protein. You're just breaking down the carbohydrates, and it's amazing, as the whole issue. The bad proteins like gluten, casein, soy, and the bad carbs, if you just break them down, they're not bad anymore. And that's the whole idea behind digestion anyway, is to break the foods down. You're just moving the time frame up, and you're just doing it while the food is still in the stomach. So, same thing. Break down the carbs into simple sugars. The simple sugars are absorbed out of the stomach, and by the time the food moves into the gut, those problem foods aren't a problem anymore. So GFCF and SCD were the first two diets in the autism community that enzymes were shown to be helpful with, and that's what produced a lot of interest. And at first, it produced a lot of controversy. It produced a lot of arguments and debate, which is what scientists do all the time. So it didn't bother me any, but people came to the conclusion that, they work for a good number of people. Maybe not everybody, but enough to be, helpful and to stick around. And the number of enzyme products that deal with those issues that are around today are probably tenfold more than there was 20 years ago when we were starting out. So we had to be onto something, or we wouldn't be copied, which is the most sincere form of flattery in this industry. So it was good. And from there, with every other diet, especially the ones you already mentioned, same thing. Each diet addresses a different kind of food. And to me, it's amazing just how many issues we have with our food, which raises another topic. It may be somewhat off topic, but what is happening to our food that so many people are becoming intolerant to it? The U.S. is leading the world in producing and farming food, and yet the food we make, or the food we process anyway, maybe that's the problem. We're not just gardening and putting it out in markets. This food's getting processed and distributed as a processed food, entirely different from what we had when it was grown. So something's happening in between the farmer pulling it out of the ground and getting it on our table. So that's another question for for another show, another topic for another show. But it's interesting to think about.
I know when I was first learning about enzymes, it was very, confusing because I only remember when I was a kid, and I've said this if you've seen any of my interviews, I'm always talking about, I always thought of it as, those Tide commercials where they were eating the grass stains. You'd see the enzymes eating the grass stains off the pants. And then I was like, wait, what do you mean I take these? What do you mean my whole body like spark of life? Like the whole reason I blink my eyes is because of enzymes. Like I just did not understand why they didn't tell us more about this in school, because I don't remember ever learning about that in school. And then I was like, oh, well, why can't I just give an enzyme then? If I'm deficient, right, then why couldn't I just give that enzyme and then eat the food? But some of our kids, as you said, I love that you said it like that too, is that, well, maybe they're deficient, in that enzyme, and maybe they're intolerant to this food, but they might be intolerant to so many foods, their body just can't handle that. And so, I know a lot of families out there, they don't make some of their kids' food sometimes. Maybe they go out to eat and it's gluten-free, dairy-free, and they say, well, why do I need an enzyme? And in my mind, I'd always say to them, how I would think about it, at least, if I didn't make it, I'm going to take it. Meaning I'm going to take that enzyme. If I personally did not make that food and I can't tell you what exactly is in the ingredients, if there's cross-contamination, my son does have celiac, which is a true allergic, allergy to wheat. But if I didn't make it, I was going to take it. And I was probably going to give more because I just wanted to make sure. But then putting that aside, even if I didn't make it, why would I want to put so much more work on my child's body who's already trying to do so much? If I can help aid in that digestion, oh, how awesome. It's a pill. You take it. It's so easy. And it seems like a no-brainer to me. A lot of families get confused if my kid can't swallow capsules. Well, I know you guys have chewables. If they can't chew that, you guys can grind them up, or you can just put them in some liquid. If you give it the first bite of food, then it's going to do what it needs to do. If you forget, which, we're parents, sometimes we forget, take it when you remember it's going to do something. And, it's not this kind of, it's not this hard thing you have to overthink. And I think that's what often a lot of emails that I get, people are so overthinking it. You just want to make sure it's a quality enzyme. You want to make sure it has the properties that you're looking for. Like, is it going to break down fats? Is it going to break down proteins? Is it going to break down certain carbohydrates? Is it going to help with gluten? There's all these different factors. And so that's why I love your products, because you have products, I think of it like the A to Z. So you have like a product, I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to take this product right here and eat what I want. Even if I'm on a special diet, I know it's going to break down those foods because my body or my child's body may still have trouble breaking down those foods for proper digestion and absorption, which means you're not getting all your vitamins and nutrients and your minerals absorbed in the way you want it to. So you can also think of it as a helping your absorption. Am I wrong?
No, that helps. And it's such an easy thing to do with minimal amount of risk. You're right. There's a lot you uncovered there. The reason why you never heard about enzymes. I'm trying to think, when I heard about enzymes was probably my senior year in college. And even then, I didn't know that's what I was going to study in grad school. But it's complicated, and it's not something. The reason the laundry detergent doesn't go on and on to you during a commercial about the science behind their enzymes, which are in laundry detergent and a lot of other things, is because they know the consumer won't understand it. So they just kind of gloss over, and they put the little Pac-Man things. Oh yes, look at our laundry has these special proteins that will eat your stain, look like little Pac-Man things, and such. So they simplify that, and I don't want to, people the eyes glaze over while they're trying to understand, and they don't want to lose the message. It's why I have a marketing person in my company, because as a scientist, I'm going to go on and on about the scientists, and I have a little bit of difficulty conveying, the applicability side, the real life usage to the consumer. And I want to go on and on about Michaelis Menten kinetics and and zero order kinetics and affinity for substrates and blah, 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 and the things and I've seen that. My first few talks were way too sciencey, and you just looking at the audience and they're just like falling asleep. So you've got to put it in the language that they understand. So we just call enzymes, they're just specialized proteins. They don't hurt your body unless you're allergic, and any protein can be an allergen. So yeah, and some people are allergic to enzymes, but not any more than any other food protein. But yeah, I sometimes wish everybody had a PhD in biochemistry, and it would be so much easier to talk about enzymes and a lot of other things too. But it's really not that hard, and as long as you trust the company you deal with, and they answer your questions, then you should feel comfortable going ahead and trying something. It took a number of years to, just with the GFCF and the SCD diet, to get people comfortable with that, especially when we're talking about kids. They're giving something to a child. But after a while, there's this tipping point. Enough people use it that they start telling other people about it. And so just by word of mouth, we got the word out. We didn't have to do that much. So yeah, and all these other diets, Feingold diet, for example. Feingold diet is there to basically recognizes that there are certain things in foods, such as artificial flavors and artificial colors, that some people react to. And they finally kind of synthesized their message down to, well, salicylate, which is, salicylate is aspirin. So that's the main structural form of salicylic acid, which is aspirin. So if you use that group and you can expand that to something else that most parents who have heard about enzymes and such understand, a salicylate is a type of phenol or type of phenol compound, and they're not bad. They're not all bad compounds. Salicylates aren't bad, but they are to people that have issues with it. So it can cause the flushing, it can cause a histamine reaction sometimes. So again, Feingold said eliminating these foods that are high in salicylates can help people who are sensitive. And again, same thing, is there something, and it's a little iffy. Sometimes we have difficulty finding a specific enzyme that'll work on something like salicylates. But again, what we do is we just try them on people who are willing to do a trial, just see if it helps. It's trial and error kind of thing. And so there are a couple of enzyme products out there that seem to help with phenolic type compounds. So for Feingold, in fact, I remember having a talk with one parent. She had 4 kids on the spectrum. So imagine how her life was. But she called and asked whether all her kids had colds and they were coughing. And she said, can I give them cold medicine that has artificial colors to it? And I said, and would the enzymes help? And I was skeptical. I said, no, I don't. Seeing those are artificial compounds, I'm not sure the enzymes would help. So I don't want you to get your hopes up that they will. And I tried my best to discourage her, or give any indication it would help. Well, the next morning she kind of she sent me an email kind of going, nanny boo boo. I gave an enzyme and all my kids slept through the night and they're doing fine with it. Gave them the cold medicine and they didn't react to it, which I had done in the past. So all 4 of my kids are fine, and she showed me something I didn't know. So goes to show. Sometimes we underestimate the power of enzymes, and so sometimes they can help with things we're not sure they can. But again, there's no problem in experimenting a little bit and just trying it out. And who knows, if it works, great. If it doesn't, then you know that, and you can move on and try something else. Um,
Well,
so
great things that you have at your company, what I love is that they can call you up and they can tell you, okay, I'm on this diet. What enzymes should I be potentially using? Okay, our child's on this diet. What, because there's a lot of different diets and maybe they're not even on a diet, and you can then recommend, what enzymes product they should take. Also, if your children aren't swallowing capsules, I know that you guys have amazing team members that can give them great ideas on, how to get that enzyme into that child. And when I say kiddo, and again, if you've seen any of the interviews, I don't care if you're 2 or 52. I say this every interview because I don't want you yelling at me later on because you're somebody's kiddo. So, regardless of the age, you guys can help them figure out what product. Going on that note, does it matter if it's a child, let's say, does it have to be 2 and over? Is it 2 and under? Or do you guys have recommendations for babies even?
yeah, definitely if they're being breastfed, we discourage using enzymes, especially protease enzymes, because there's a lot of good proteins in mother's milk. Antibodies especially are proteins. We don't want to break those up and inactivate them. So I usually say once a child is eating whole foods, is not being supplemented by breast milk, then it's fine. I'll always say going with low and slow kind of thing, low amounts at first, make sure your child tolerates the enzyme, just like you're trying any other food. And getting it into kids can be problematic, but the nice thing is you can open up a capsule, it's just powder, you can mix it in water, juice, or even things like jelly, mashed potatoes, or pudding, whatever, and they can just eat it along there. The only issue I have is if a child has EOE, eosinophilic esophagitis. I always have trouble with the word eosinophils. Eosinophilic esophagitis, which when there's white blood cells lining the throat. Active enzymes in the mouth and being swallowed can activate the white blood cells and cause a little bit of irritation or swelling or so. So that's the only instance where I say you shouldn't take enzymes in raw form, out of the capsule. That's optimal is to take it in a capsule if you can. It's a good idea to try and get your kid used to swallowing capsules. And really quickly, I'm sure you think, don't have them tilt their head back. Have them put their chin down. It's actually easier to swallow a capsule that way. But anyway, you can open it up, and a lot of kids take it that way. We do have one of our products is in a chewable form. Again, you can get a little irritation. It's just like you're eating raw pineapple. And after a while, you notice you got that little irritation where the protease enzymes are breaking down that layer of dead cells that's in your mouth and throat, and it causes the fresh new skin to be a little irritated. So you can always brush the kid's teeth, or have them drink some water or something, and help clear the enzyme from the mouth and throat. But we always get nervous when you're talking about small kids. I just leave it up to the parents' judgment. We've never had, or I've never heard of a bad incident of a child with enzymes. Definitely if they're tablets, you don't want them choking on it, or depending on the size of the tablet, it could be a choking hazard. But again, just use your best judgment, your mama's judgment, and figure it out. There are, trying to think, I mean, my little granddaughter is 3 and or will be 3 next month, and I'm she doesn't have any particular gut issues and such. But I think it'd be a good idea maybe to since we're getting her potty trained now, that it might be a good idea to get her on a low enzyme protocol. First she's going to be introduced. She's going to be going through school and childcare and be getting different foods. So it might be a good idea to kind of help her gut assimilate these any new foods and such. But I was just thinking back when I first joined an enzyme manufacturer, started working there, and I started taking enzymes for the first time. This was like '97, and it was different. And I thought there was nothing wrong with my digestion until I started taking enzymes. I noticed how much better I felt and how much better I assimilated my food. So I think we all have some foods that we don't tolerate well, and we think we just don't like them. Maybe we don't like them because it's the way they make us feel. And I will tell you though, as you get older, you find more foods that are troublesome. So, us old guys, we start losing parts. I don't have my gallbladder. Heartburn is more of an issue. Got to cut back on fats. But we have enzymes to take care of the fats. Being a Southern boy, it's hard not to cut back on bacon and such. But yeah, we have enzymes for all that. So everyone's on some diet. They may not have a name or an acronym for it, but everybody's got their own preference for foods. And over a lifetime, what you get is, you get used to your own kind of food. So, everyone has their own particular diet. We have all these other diets you mentioned. The fructose, oligo, disaccharide, monosaccharide, and polyols, which are sugar alcohols. That's a big one. And not too many are too familiar with that. But again, it deals with carbohydrates. And the thing that's interesting is they add these sugar alcohols, and especially sucralose, xylitol, what's the other one? Sorbitol, and all these things can wreak havoc in some people's guts. Me, I can't take sucralose. If I eat sucralose, I just get sick. And luckily, I can taste it. If it's in my mouth, I can taste it. I can stop eating it. But still, I read a lot of labels, but sometimes I get in a hurry. Anyway, yeah. So we have this FODMAP, and it's basically trying to get people to eat foods that are low, especially those people dealing with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, having a lot of these large carbohydrates, these disaccharides and trisaccharides and large carbohydrates can be problematic in causing gasiness and bloating. So the idea is to reduce, sort of like the SCD, reduce or eliminate certain carbohydrates, introduce others. But again, you're changing your diet, and you can add enzymes to help with that, ease the transition. And we've got keto diet, which is extremely popular. It's not just limited to the autism community, though it's been found to be very helpful for a subset of those kids having seizures and having a much higher level of fat in their diet from fish oils and omega-3s, omega-6s, seems to help their nervous system. The problem is assimilating these large amounts of fat in their diet can be a problem. So we have enzymes called lipases that can break down the fats while they're in the stomach, and allow one to assimilate them without having the bowel issues, the passing a lot of gas and loose stools and that type of thing. So ideally, to me, it just seems whether you're on a known diet or whether you're on your own diet that you've customized over the years. It just seems like everyone should at least try enzymes for a week or so. That's all it would take to find out if they're really helpful. It's kind of like what it did for me to tell me that, yeah, the enzymes are useful. Same way with you, Kristen. You probably found out the same way, not just with your child, but also yourself as well.
Absolutely. And I think that for the whole family, it's important to be looking at, your own digestion, your own health. It's obvious that a lot of our kiddos have digestive issues. We talk about poop all the time, but then when you really start diving into it, you'll notice mom and dad might have digestive issues. Maybe a sibling does, maybe a grandparent does. And when you start really asking those questions, you're like, oh, I never really thought about that before. Or, oh, I thought everybody had that issue. And then you start learning ways to kind of help your own gut and how important poop is. And then you're like, oh, I feel so much better now. And that's what I love about enzymes, is that it's just, to me, it really is one of those pills that, I even hate to say pill, because really it's these live organisms, in a sense, that are in these capsules that are those little Pac-Men that really are. And that's how I visualize it. They're going in and they're helping break up my food so that my body cannot be bloated. So my body can absorb everything and I can get those nutrients that, what's meant for me to eat. I'm eating the food to fuel my body. And so I can feel better. Same thing for our kiddos. If our kiddos cannot digest that, if they can't break it up, I don't care what diet you're doing for your child. None of those diets are going to really help. If you want to kind of help those diets and take it to another level because you feel, the diet helps, oh my gosh, add an enzyme. It's amazing. And now I get so excited about enzymes. If you know me, I love enzymes. And so it's very, to me, it's an easy thing to do. Now, how do people find out about you? Dr. Houston, how do they find you? Do they go to your website? Can they call you guys up? How does that work?
Yeah, you can just Google Houston Enzymes and find our website, which is houstonenzymes.com. We try to put a lot of information on there. It's not just for selling product, but it's to inform the consumer about what enzymes do and or what they don't do, how you should take it, tips for like dealing with children and getting enzymes into them as well. So yeah, and I'm probably the only company that I'm aware of where you can email the CEO/science person and get an answer within 24 hours as to your question. Yeah, if I have doctors call me while they have clients in their office sometimes with a question right there. This is kind of funny. I don't encourage calling because our office phones, which are horrible, I can't hear. I'm a little hard of hearing. I have hearing aids. They're connected to my cell phone, but I don't really want to give my cell phone number out to the general. But email me, and if you want to talk, face to face, I'll be glad to give you that information. Hopefully, we'll get our office phones fixed so I can use the darn thing and talk to people. I actually enjoy talking to customers. It's good for them to see that there's a real person behind the company, and it's good for me to put a face to a name. Customer loyalty is really important to us. We have many customers from our first year in business still on as customers. So we like to get to know them not just as customers but as friends. So yeah, I don't want anyone to ever feel like they sometimes get overwhelmed. Oh, I can't believe I'm talking to Dr. Houston. I said, oh my goodness, I'm nothing special. You should see me at night in front of the TV, half asleep, and drool. It's just nothing special except I just know something a lot of people don't. But
pretty special, Dr. Houston, I think. And you guys can go to the website, and I know there's an info section there that you guys can email him. And I mean, I think, you know, as a parent in the autism community, I think it's really special having somebody like you that has not given up on us. You continue to make great products to try to help our community even more. You make sure that if you don't have a product, like all of a sudden you're like, wait, what diet? Oh, wait, I got to figure out how to add something to this or do something to that. You're constantly, you know, creating new stuff to make sure that our kiddos can be helped and they can feel good, because, you know, we always say if a kid can't feel good, they can't do good. And if a child is hurting and they can't communicate that to you, or they're not going to the bathroom, or whatever the problem might be, I know, because I've seen you for well over a decade, you will sit there and you will talk to parents, you will try to figure it out, and I love that. And so what is your final message that you want to leave with parents today?
Oh gosh, what is it? You know, this has been a weird year. 2020 has been strange. There's been a lot of things that take our mind, distracts us, takes our focus off things. I'm hoping, you know, maybe at the beginning of next year, we can start getting back to thinking about the things, our health in general. I know we've got the COVID virus. A lot of people are being really affected are those who are overweight, not in good shape, not in good health. They seem to be suffering most. So it's just so, I keep thinking, you know, if 10 years ago, 5 years ago, if they had taken, you know, better hold of their health, and a lot of that is gut health. Gut is part of the immune system. If they had gotten that in shape, you know, would we be seeing the numbers of infections and deaths, which is just so tragic. But, you know, I try to be the eternal optimist. And again, I think if we could just get past the distractions of whatever it is, concentrate on our health, concentrate on our diet, better foods we put in our body, and help our bodies assimilate the food we eat and absorb, we're all going to be better off for it.
Absolutely. I love that. So if you guys have questions, please, please, please go to the website, contact Dr. Houston. He will answer your questions. As I said, he is there to just help you guys. And thank you so much for being here today.
No, Kristen, it's always a pleasure. Love doing it.
And thank you to you guys. Until next time. Bye, guys.